Evolution is incredible, and it's fascinating to look back over the years at how humans have developed with time. But let's not pretend the process is over, because we're still adapting and evolving every single day. Like Darwin said, it's not the most intelligent species that wins the evolution race, but the one who adapts the best. Hopefully, we'll continue to stay at the top of the food chain for a while at least. And it seems our bodies agree with us, because they're slowly cutting out some not so important parts too. Today we're going to show you 10 body parts that will disappear one day. Something else that's always evolving is the hub, because we've got something new almost every day. Before we start, make sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out, because we wouldn't want you to fall behind after all. Toes. The recent weather problems around the world have shown us that global warming is a real issue. Whether the people in charge decide to take note of that fact or not is another story entirely. But it seems our bodies are trying to prepare us for the worst, even if no one else is. What we mean by this specifically is our toes. Back thousands of years ago, we would have used our toes to help pick things up. They were designed and shaped specifically to help us with this task. But what about in years to come when we need them for a different problem like swimming? Say the polar ice caps melt, and we end up living in a virtually underwater existence. There's a chance our toes could adapt and become webbed to assist us this way. In fact, even if we don't lose all our toes, it's likely that we'll lose our pinky toe because it doesn't really have much use anymore. If we do end up having webbed feet in years to come, we might also adapt to have webbed hands, which could throw everything we know up in the air. Luckily, because evolution is kind of renowned for taking its time, it definitely won't be our problem. Darwin's tubercle. Darwin's tubercle, or as you might know it, Darwin's point, is the tiny pointed part at the outer end of your ear. If you're looking in a mirror right now and thinking you can't see it, that might be because you're only 10% of the population that has a Darwin's point on their ears. It was named as such because Darwin highlighted the point in this book, The Descent of Man. He showed the big similarities between human ears and monkey ears, which you'll obviously be able to see the point on. This was one of the ways Darwin was able to conclude that evolution is real, and the majority of people believe him, although of course there's a few who don't. By now, you probably have gathered that this feature was important before we evolved into human beings, and you might have also realized that it has no real use by now. As such, it's likely that with time, the Darwin's point will no longer be a human feature. Already, only a small percentage of people can show they have one, so it looks as if it's definitely on its way out. Are you one of the people who has a Darwin's point? Let us know in the comments. Body hair. You might react differently to this news depending on whether you're a male or female. Scientists think that eventually, there's a high chance body hair will simply die out from the human race. Imagine that. Do you think we look weird, or do you think we really wouldn't notice the difference at all? We used to rely on body hair to keep us warm when outside temperatures were cold, but now luckily we have clothes for that. As humans start to evolve, our thick body hair grew thinner. When humans get too hot, they sweat, which you'll probably be well aware of whenever the summer months hit. And thick body hair was a problem for that, because it would become matted and stop us from being able to cool down. As such, the body hair became thinner. You might not be so happy to hear that around the time this happened, humans also got gradually better at sweating, which is why we rely on deodorant so heavily nowadays. Darn those ancestors of ours. Maybe, when we inevitably end up relying on machines and robots to do all our work, we'll end up sweating less and then our thick hair will begin to grow back. We're not sure which option we'd prefer at this rate. Wisdom teeth. You might be pretty certain that you know someone with wisdom teeth. If you do, you know they spend a good chunk of their time complaining about them. And while you might think that all the moaning and fussing is for no reason, there's actually a lot of scope for us to complain about those pesky teeth right in the back of our mouths. Wisdom teeth originate back thousands of years ago, before the invention of knives and forks and the nice soft foods we're used to today. You see, wisdom teeth were pretty much the only thing that helped us survive years ago, because they were the big teeth that would let us chew through whatever foods we could get our hands on. Nowadays, we obviously don't need wisdom teeth anymore, yet for some people they're still there. And unlike many of the body features on our list, wisdom teeth don't quietly sit there in your mouth. They try and force their way through your gums, even though there isn't really room for them to do so anymore. The pain associated with these extra teeth is because our bodies just aren't suited to having up to 4 extras sitting in the back. Male nipples. Our generation might be the ones to shout "free the nipple," but that doesn't necessarily mean that evolution agrees. Or maybe it does, you can decide on that one. But our next body trait to disappear is the male nipple. Scientists have differing views as to why the male nipple still exists. Some think it's because the gene pool is full of them, because everyone has them, and others think that it's a trait we'll continue to have for no reason. But whereas the female nipple is used for nursing to encourage a healthy offspring, the male equivalent doesn't really serve any purpose. Some think that it hasn't disappeared yet because it doesn't really cause any problems. This would make it the human equivalent of the whale's pelvic bone. It doesn't cause any harm, but it also doesn't have any evolutionary benefits. As such, it's still there, but not really for any reason. But sometimes male nipples can cause problems, like cancers or other diseases, so it would make sense for it to slowly phase out of existence. It's likely that it will eventually, but probably not for many years. On the bright side, think about how weird chests would look with nothing but hair there. Plantaris muscle. The plantaris muscle is a small muscle in the calf of the leg, which lies next to two bigger muscles called the soleus and gastrocnemius muscles. While it plays a small role in helping us walk and flex our toes, scientists are pretty much dumbfounded when it comes to a real use for the plantaris muscle. It's already been dubbed as a useless muscle because alone, it doesn't have a significant contribution. But many people think that this stems from evolution. Years ago, we used our feet almost as much as our hands. We'd use them to grip things, to pick things up, and they'd be almost as, well, handy as our hands. Now that we walk on our feet, there's not much point to having muscles so defined because they'd go to waste. It wouldn't be a good use of your energy to keep flexing those plantaris muscles because you wouldn't be doing anything important with them anyway. So it's quite possible that eventually the plantaris muscles will cease to exist. Unless, of course, we suddenly start walking back on our 4 feet and have to learn how to use our feet as hands all over again. Maybe we should get practicing. Paranasal sinuses. A fun fact about paranasal sinuses is that nobody has the same ones. Everyone's are ever so slightly different, which is why they sometimes puzzle scientists as to what they're used for. And while the paranasal sinuses may have a few good uses, many people think that they'll eventually disappear because they have the capability to cause a lot of problems. Your paranasal sinuses are the mucus-lined cavities around your nose. They're the things that if you get blocked up, you feel like you're getting a cold. Their main function is to act as conditioning for when you breathe. When we breathe in really cold air, it can irritate our bodies. So the paranasal sinuses heat this air back up before our bodies use it. Some people also think that they have evolved to strengthen our skulls, but that's never been really confirmed. But the most interesting part of the paranasal sinuses is that they work to control your voice, which is why no two people have an entirely 100% identical voice too. And as you may have guessed by now, these body parts don't really do anything major like keep us alive, so there's a chance these sinuses could have disappeared one day. Muscles. Okay, so go with us here, and don't fret too much, because when we say humans might lose our muscles, we don't mean to say that one day we'll be nothing but bones and fat. What we do mean is that we could probably lose the strength from our muscles, and we could all end up being much weaker than we are now. The reason for this is because our ancestors required far greater strength to help them during everyday life than we need today. Think about it. Any strenuous task that needs completing, we probably have an easier way of doing it now. We don't need to chop wood for the fire by hand, for one example. If the heating broke and we needed to actually use a fire log, we could just drive to the store and pick up some already chopped wood. Life is just so much simpler nowadays. So it wouldn't be too surprising if we did lose some of our strength, and studies have already shown that we're not half as muscular as our families of the distant past. Luckily, we don't anticipate losing too much of our strength, and maybe if we all add a few extra gym sessions to our weekly routine, we can prevent that from happening after all. Races. The main thing that speeds up evolution is gene flow. The wider the gene pool, the more variety we can achieve, and the healthier the population will slowly become. That's what Darwin insists, at least. And one thing that we might see happen in thousands of years is the removal of different races. Things like ease of transportation and a more global economy means it's far easier to meet the love of your life on the other side of the world. And what's stopping you from moving over there and starting a family in a completely different place? More and more people are doing this now, leading to less compartmentalized races than ever before. This might mean that, eventually, we would have one single race, or at least a lot less variety than we have now. Then, during the process, genetic differences start to vanish, meaning that one day, humans might look a lot more similar than they do today. We're already seeing this happening all over the globe, and it's truly fascinating to think that eventually our ancestors could have come from anywhere in the world. Think of the stories, think of the cultures, and think about just how interesting this could be. Extrinsic ear muscles. The extrinsic ear muscles are a collection of 3 muscles in the outer ear, called the anterior, superior, and posterior. Despite their long and complex sounding names, these muscles aren't actually that useful, and don't really bring anything to the table when it comes to their human function. Most mammals have the same muscular makeup in their ears, except that they're used for moving the ears. Us humans aren't required to twitch our ears for any purpose, so the extrinsic muscles aren't a body feature we need. Maybe thousands of years ago they were useful for communication purposes, but now we don't tend to move our ears to catch someone's attention. These muscles are also the ones behind the common party trick of being able to wiggle your ears. If you can't do it yourself, you probably know someone who can. And whether you can or can't, you're likely still confused as to how it's done. It's one of those strange talents that can't really be pinpointed, but now you know exactly what muscles are behind the fun trick. The fact that we only use this muscle group for attention at social gatherings means that it's pretty low down on the evolutionary scale. So maybe in thousands of years, it'll be nothing more than an old wives' tale that once humans could wiggle their ears. Are you as intrigued as us about what the humans of the future could look like? We almost wish we could be there to witness it for ourselves. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.